This is Mark Blood.
And I'm Tim Mason. Welcome to episode 10 of Blood, Sweat, and Tim.
Live from Crystal Pick Studios in Fairport, New York, it's another episode of Blood, Sweat, and Tim with your hosts, Mark Blood and Tim Mason. Here's part 2 of our BST Millennials podcast.
Millennials will learn that they're going to have a face-to-face relationship. At the end of the day, looking somebody in the eye goes a lot further than sending them, a 90-character text.
And I think that's a little bit twofold, right? Because we are in this sort of global economy. So suddenly you're communicating with people halfway around the world, and you may not have that face-to-face interaction. So, we have 11 offices. So I'm emailing and calling constantly people that I've never met in person.
Katie, they have Skype now.
Yeah, but nobody wants to turn on the camera. But that's where I really appreciate the senior leadership sort of taking me under their wing and bringing me to these in-person meetings and getting to see that interaction, because I don't really know how to learn that other than by example.
So that's a great point, and I appreciate from each of you. What have you learned from our generation that you do value?
So let me tee up for something on that, Mike, because Mike's been involved in.
And Mike, you can throw Mark under the bus anytime.
Yeah, absolutely. Just watch out when you walk out of the room. So we have, and Mike's participated in this. Inside DeJoy and Blood, we have this thing called our SIG groups, which SIG is an acronym for Strategic Initiative Groups. And one of the things that we did with these SIG groups was we took our next generation of business leaders and we put them into positions where they had the ability to think about, make recommendations on, develop policy on things like sales and marketing, HR and recruiting, processes that we use in our business. Has that been an opportunity for you, Mike, to gain some exposure to what people like Tim or me have to think about, and what have you kind of learned out of that?
Yeah, Mark, I think that's easily the most significant initiative that we've had in my 3 years plus at DeJoy and Blood. It's been an eye-opening experience for me from the first day, kind of being part of this group. It really opened my eyes to the challenges. I think we sat down the first day and thought we were going to set the world on fire, but you realize that there is a lot of challenges. There's a lot of things to think about. You can't just kind of make policies on a whim, right? There's a lot that goes into these decisions that are going to affect a lot of people. So it's been awesome.
Are you more thoughtful because of that situation?
I think so. It's been great for the millennials, right? So we're thinking like we're part of these strategic initiative groups. We can actually affect change on the organization, and there has been a lot of good stuff that has come out of them.
But has that experience began to answer some of your why?
Yeah, for sure. I think a lot of times we can identify the issue. Thinking of a solution is often a lot more difficult and proves to be a lot more challenging. So that why and having to kind of put yourself in this, where you're asking yourself why do we do this, and then coming up with an explanation has definitely been a challenge.
So what do you guys see as something you may have learned from your leadership team that you didn't know going in, but you appreciate as part of future management opportunities and leadership styles?
So I think for me at Bergman, there's a different side of it, right, where we are technically oriented. We're architects and engineers. So, my bosses have done things, for years that I've never done before. And so they are constantly learning and relearning. And so for me to fold into that's been incredibly beneficial. Outside of that, begrudgingly, I think I'm learning patience. Because things do take time. And like Mike was saying, the solution is maybe that we don't have that instant gratification that I want to fix it right away. Maybe you need to stop and think about it and talk to a few people first. So begrudgingly, I think I've learned a lot of patience, or am learning.
Mike?
Like I said, I'm in more of a customer-facing role. So I'll go get a cup of coffee with you, Tim.
All right, sounds good.
But
you already have my business.
Yeah. I've learned a lot from going on joint meetings with upper level management. You sit there and you get to look at some of these guys in action, who've been around the block, who know what they're talking about. So in a situation like mine, I learn by experience, and takeaways. And then, when it's time for me to go up to the plate and bat, I have something in the back of my head that says, oh, well, I had a similar situation that I saw, my boss go through, and then.
So one of the things I always think is interesting about banking, so you say that you're in a sales role, but inherently a big part of banking is you have to make decisions on who you're going to work with, who you're going to lend money to. So Tim's talked about personal relationships. He's talked about those customer-facing relationships where it's much more than a text message. So banks make decisions on who they're going to lend money to based off of financial statements, cash flows, and all kinds of other stuff. But the other thing they do is they make decisions off of who they're going to lend money to based on who they have relationships with, who's part of their network, how they interact with them on a personal basis. What have you learned out of that? You clearly can't use text messages to figure that out. You can't get that out of an email. You have to see people in action, and in your exposure to that, how has that changed your view of how you deal with people in a business setting?
I mean, it comes down to character. When you're going out with a client or a few clients, whether they own the business together, et cetera, you really got to see how they're acting towards each other. One of my favorite things my lending officer says is you got to see how they play golf. Are they kicking the ball around? If they're cheating out on the golf course, then they're going to cheat your loan.
Right.
So takeaways like that, small takeaways that can end up being huge in the end, which could save my ass someday.
Right. And that's, that really speaks to what Tim's talking about, and that is that the growth in a business and the growth in your roles is very much about how you build connections and how you build that network.
So let's say with each of you guys, what does the company of the future look like? And when Mark and I are sitting on a beach in Lake Ontario somewhere, what does the
water's high? There's no beaches left.
That's true. What does the future workplace look like? What is as Ray Isaac would call it, the sustainable culture that's been created that you guys think is the ideal opportunity? Okay. Just curious what that looks like. Are there just foosball machines and technology and iPads?
So now, Mike, Tim's putting you on the spot. He's like throwing out the SIG group idea here, and he's basically saying, okay, I'm going to hand this off to you, and you're going to have to maybe use a little of Katie's patience and Mike's assessment of character, and it's the hard stuff.
All right, yeah, so that's kind of a tough question. There's a lot to unpack there.
You would have asked us that question.
You're
Come
correct,
on, Mike.
You're correct. So I guess
people need to know Mike and I are personal friends, so I can jab them a little bit.
For
right?
Sure. So I think a part of it I touched on earlier with the kind of the flexibility, right? So there's going to be technology that allows for seamless communication across a number of platforms, almost 24/7. So at all times, we're going to see like more open workplaces. I think we have that at DeJoy, Knopf and Blood already of kind of an open collaborative workspace that really kind of brings people together for creative discussions and whatnot. I think that, like I said, that technology piece is huge. The flexibility. So, there's not going to be set hours that you're supposed to be anywhere.
But you're dodging this question. You're not answering his question because I think that the question that Tim's asking you is when you're in that leadership role, which you're in now, and that role is only going to become bigger. That we know that technology is going to be there. I'm going to be talking to my glasses, and at the same point in time, I'm talking to myself and so forth. What he's asking you about is he's asking you about in that big leadership role, what do you want your culture to look like? How do you want people that are inside your culture to see you behave and how do you want them to behave to have a great business?
So at Bergman right now, we're actually doing a lot of workplace design, and we're constantly faced with this question. And it's interesting because whether it's a financial institution or a marketing company or a call center, there is a lot of the same trends moving the same way. And it's a lot of what Mike was saying, technology, the flexibility, but the flexibility in the way that you work, right? Some days I want to come in and sit down at my desk and put on my headphones and crank through what I need for the day. But some days I want to have that conversation. I want to talk to you creatively. I want to know more. So I think it's part of that, having that flexibility in how you work, when you work, where you work. I want to know everybody by name, by face, have a personal connection to somebody in their personal life. I think a lot of that starts to be very important.
But where I was going, why I was getting in your face, was really about what do you want your customer to think about you? What do you want your customer to think about you in terms of what your business is about, how you guys behave as an organization? What are those statements that your culture is about?
I mean, I think we always kind of talk about this as have our clients think that we're so easy to do business with that they wouldn't want to do business with anyone else because it's so easy to do business with us, and that comes with the people and how we take care of our people so that they can take care of our clients. That comes with our ease in using technology to communicate with them and deliver a work product, a quality work product that they're looking for.
That you care. You're putting together the cultural statement that we want to behave in a way with our customer that we care.
Exactly.
I don't know. I mean, honestly, in a lot of ways, I'm not really sure that that's different than what Tim and I have said all of our careers.
Or that we've tried to create, right? It's just a little bit different approach to it. We're coming from your angle, not the more, conservative or stricter angle.
Well, Tim, I mean, you can look at in Tim's case, Tim built a fantastic business, a business that is highly respected by the methods that he used to demonstrate that he cared. And if you talk to his clients, he's used those methods to basically say when you talk about sales and marketing, he's the guy that they think about. And in your own ways, I think you have to figure out some of that formula. But I think it's gonna be done with a different platform, but it has to be a part of your culture as to how you care and how you're going to demonstrate that you care.
I just want to add that over time, I absolutely become millennial friendly. Okay. And I say that jokingly.
Tim's been transformed.
No, I have been, because at the end of the day, I have a digital company that has, like I said, 15, 16 people now this week, which all of them are millennials, right? But I've learned to trust. I've learned to give them autonomy, all those things, and they've lived up to the expectation that I had. It's the antithesis. So I have Mason Digital, which is this young millennial team, and Mason Marketing, which, by the way, is not that. It is the exact opposite of that, okay? And it's funny because there's some conflictions between that I find myself actually trying to be more millennial-like with my older group then there's some things I've learned that I want to translate over there, like social consciousness and caring and flexibility and all those things that they're looking for, because I found how much they like it. This group on digital, I'm flattered when they come into me and they say after a few weeks when they've been there, because we've been hiring a lot of people, this is the best place I've ever worked, because they love all the things you've described: collaboration, openness, and they actually like, and I don't know if you guys think this is corny, but kind of the family atmosphere that we've created. I mean, they go to work with their friends every day, right? Is that important to you, to kind of work with people you like?
Hugely. Yeah, the people that I work with is almost more important than what I'm doing some days.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree more. I think it just comes down to culture and environment again. You know what you're getting into right off the bat. Is your boss someone that you can relate with? I think, being able to relate with them is huge and will ultimately lead to your success. So,
yeah, Tim, just kind of touch on one thing you said earlier. I remember hearing this, that that what millennials want in the workplace is really what everyone wants. They're just not as outspoken about it. So the fact that you said, kind of your Mason marketing team, you've been trying to kind of do some millennial things with them as well. And I think that makes a ton of sense because people across all generations, I guess the question is, why wouldn't you want more transparency from upper management? Why wouldn't you want more flexibility? Even if they're not things that you're willing to kind of go to the grave for, like, kind of why not, right? I mean,
yeah, but one of the problems that we have is we go, why? Because we never thought that it was in all of our business careers, we never thought that anybody needed to be transparent with us. So there's an education process behind this where we have to figure out the why of why you want us to be transparent. I think if you asked him the question, hey, can you show your people where your earnings come from, where your revenue comes from, how much money you make, where you make it, and so forth, I think if you ask him that question, he'll be extraordinarily transparent.
I have
about
company meetings to take him through that information. Here's a classic example.
But you would have spent a lot of time saying, I don't understand why you even care.
No, I don't, because actually they feel more a sense of ownership, if you will, if they're part of something bigger. And my point is this. So I had 2 company meetings. We have 2 companies. And one day in the conference room, I was telling the company we were Rochester this is digital, top 100. We grew at 54% last year. Our margins were this, blah, blah, blah. Hey, everybody, we celebrated our top 100. I gave everybody a $100 bill. The place is just ecstatic for the rest of the day, right? On the Mason marketing side, we've been there, seen it, done it, right? We've been a top 100 company, but the traditional side, you can imagine advertising isn't growing as fast, right? And so I happened to mention as part of that traditional side, hey, digital's growing at 54%, blah, blah, blah. And one of the younger people on the Mason marketing side called me to his office and he said to me, Tim, I want to be part of something bigger. And I got to tell you, that day, the light bulb went off for me. Because I sensed the fact, number one, that maybe I'm going to lose somebody if I don't give him more opportunity or allow him the opportunity to make it bigger. And that hit it for me. I mean, it made it clear where your guys' mission is. It actually helped me understand how I need to communicate our mission. Because honestly, on the Mason marketing side, we're still growing at 12%. It wasn't 54, right? So I got to maybe do a better job on that side saying, here's where you can find your passion. Here's the things that you're contributing to and all of that, right? But it was like an epiphany for me. And I got to tell you, the millennials who have come into our company over the past 2 years have changed me personally and changed my outlook on life, okay? Now, and I think it's helped me understand better my own children, okay? Because I just kind of get it now. It's a passion. They want to follow their passion. And they do care deeply. They don't just all have the same way. They don't wear their emotions on my sleeve like I do, but they do absolutely care. So, for everybody out there, the best thing they can do is kind of infuse, in my opinion, some of this millennial culture, because we do have to look at things differently.
Yeah, that purpose, that's kind of my mindset is, if you're a baby boomer or Gen X, whatever, why wouldn't you want to have a purpose to kind of wake up and go to work in the morning and feel like you're kind of doing something that's worthwhile? I mean, I know the days of coming in and punching the clock, working at the same company for 30 years with maybe not as much on the side of purpose, but I think that's something that kind of everybody can identify with.
We were just having a conversation recently with Ray Isaac, who does a lot of speaking and leadership speaking. And he told us this story where he does kind of a keynote, and he gets in front of 100 people. And he says, everybody close your eyes a second. These are all leaders and owners of their companies. He said, everybody close your eyes, and I'd like you to raise your hand if you love coming to work in the morning. And he let them go for a minute, and he said, open your eyes. And he heard gasps. 6 people had their hand raised. And he said, how can you possibly think your people are going to love coming to work if you don't love coming to work, right? So there's a mentality there that we have to exhibit that. We have to create a great workplace that we enjoy, that you will also enjoy. I mean, if we're not enjoying it, you're not going to enjoy it. Would you agree with that, Mike?
Absolutely. I mean, I'm just thinking back a little bit now as well. And I think the reason that we come in and ask some of those questions that you might not want to answer, us trying to be transparent,
Sure.
et cetera, is so, we can be in a successful role like yourself someday, you with Mason Marketing, Mason Digital, you with DeJoy Knopf and Blood, Ray Isaac at Isaac Heating and Cooling. How are we going to get into that decision-making role? I know it's very tough. And Mike had some trouble with the whole, what was it, SIG? Yeah. But, ultimately, I think that's why we're coming to you and asking these questions and trying to make it as transparent as possible, because we want to know how to get there.
But I think one of the stereotypes is, and you guys can demystify this, is that I think a lot of people in Tim's and my generation sit back and think that you're expecting us to just feed it to you. And the challenge that I'm throwing out to anybody in the millennial generation, if you want it, you need to go get it. And that's not something that a lot of people are comfortable with. There's not a lot of people that are comfortable walking into my office and saying, okay, tell me why. Tell me why you did it, and expect me to give them, an honest, straight up answer. But I would challenge people in your generation that if you don't ask, you won't know, and you might be in a position that you're not going to get the information that you want.
Yeah, Mark, I think that's not just true of the millennial generation, but there's people across all generations. I'm sure there's baby boomers that would love to sit in your seat and have your job, but they might not be the go-getters. But there's go-getters in the millennial generation that if you present them with this challenge and say, this is how I did it, you can do the same, but you got to hit it hard. You got to, really, go balls to the wall, and they're going to take that challenge and they're going to do it. So I think that might not be a generational thing, as it is just people are different.
Just a personality thing.
Some people are go-getters. There's go-getters in all generations, and there's people that are going to sit on the sidelines. So I think that some millennials will respond to that challenge.
Mike and team, thank you for being here. I want to ask you to do one thing, okay? So we have small business owners, managers, HR people listening to this, right, who want millennials to come and help them change the culture in their companies. So I want each of you just to make a little pitch. Give me 30 seconds on why they should, be more respectful of millennials, accept millennials as who they are, and the contribution you believe millennials can make to any company out there. So, Katie, I'm going to pick on you first. Go ahead.
Well, I think through all the things that we've identified, you're going to find that millennials are hardworking. If you give them the opportunities and the right reasons, they're going to work for you, because we want to do something that matters. We want to be successful. So give us the opportunity.
Like I was saying before, I think we're a driving force behind workplace change as well. Change isn't always good, but bringing something new to the table really can open the mind of others, whether it's your peers, your colleagues, or your hires. So
I think the one thing I would say to business owners is just to try as hard as you can to avoid the generalizations. There are some great millennials out there, just like there's great people, in all generations. There's great hardworking people that can bring a lot to your organization. So don't be kind of frightened or scared off by the stereotypes that we've kind of talked about today.
All right, Mark, you're the old guy in the room. What do you have to say about the millennials? If you've had experience. You have a lot of millennials who work with you, and I know that certainly you don't have the same stereotypes. So, what has been your success?
There might be some people who don't totally agree with what I'd say, but I think in many regards I'm a transformed person from where I probably was, maybe 10, 15 years ago. And I'm a transformed person because I think I've done a pretty decent job of investing the time to understand and to get myself educated, to develop a deeper understanding about, not necessarily about how the millennial generation thinks, but how people feel connected and fulfilled and find their purpose in what they're doing from a career perspective. I have had enough time and I've seen enough mistakes that I've made to understand a little bit better about how to connect with different generations. And I think millennials are just one of them. And the biggest word that I use a lot of times is I think you have to get rid of the nostalgia. What happened to you years ago can be I think it can be a reflection on how you're going to make decisions going forward. But if you're a leader in positions like we are, Tim, and you're a leader that is foundation under them is merely just the nostalgia of how you got there, I think you pretty soon won't be there. And you have to throw the nostalgia away, and you have to get into the swimming pool of new generations and swim around it and see what the water's like. And that requires guys like you and me to take some of those old habits that we may have had and quickly get them to go away.
Yeah, I'm going to finish by saying this, that I read this quote that I think sums up my opinion, and that is, the millennial generation will entirely recast the image of youth from downbeat and alienated to upbeat and engaged, with potentially seismic consequences for America. I really believe that. I mean, I've had great experiences. It's changed our culture and our companies. It's infused some very positive things, youthful energy, if you will, okay, that I think is so important today. So I just want to say thank you very much for being here. You can now go home and eat your organic foods or whatever you guys do. Okay, Mike, you can go home to your new baby. Okay, you can go across the street to Fairport Brewing. Okay, Katie, I don't know what you like. You can go work out or do something like that. Okay, guys, listen, park anywhere you want tomorrow, and you can come in at 10. For Tim Mason and Mark Blood, that's it for today's podcast. Thanks a lot, guys.
Thanks so much.
guys.
Thank you, guys.
From Mark Blood and Tim Mason, thanks for listening to this edition of Blood, Sweat, and Tim.
Thanks for listening to today's podcast. Please subscribe to Blood, Sweat, and Tim on your favorite podcast app.